When you talk about the spot and stalking, how do you find a bull that's not going to talk?
I'm either echolocating or I'm using my glass. So I'm finding master vantage points or I'm finding ridge lines, and I use a mobile vantage point where I'm working up the ridge line. You get a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening. If it's really hot, you might only get a half an hour to an hour in the morning. So being on these prime vantage points, being on these ridge lines, using my glass, echolocating, like listening for bugles, the rut ebbs and flows. The more competition, the more they're going to bugle. So if a herd bull has satellite bulls, he's going to have to bugle. But if there's no cows to be bred, he doesn't have to call, and he knows that. But they're still going to be fired up. They're still going to rut, even in high pressure unit, but they do a lot of their rutting at night. What I do is I use the night as well, and I'm not hunting at night. I can't shoot anything at night, but what I can do is I can travel roads or I can travel ridge lines, and I can get above big basins and I can listen. And if I hear them bugling down in there, well, now I have some elk located for my morning hunt.
My name is Derek Wolfe. I'm a Super Bowl champion and a 10-year NFL vet. Now, after a decade of professional football, I'm focusing on my other passions. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Wolfe Untamed. Today's guest is Brian Barney. Brian is one of the best bow hunters there are. Great guy, great friend. He's host of the Elevated Podcast through Eastmans channel. He lives in Montana. He's a business owner, just a great guy all around. Hope you enjoy this episode. Brian Barney, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you taking the time out of your morning, making this happen. We're both on Western time, so Mountain Standard Time, so it works out good. It's tough because my production team is on the East Coast, so that 2-hour difference just confuses everybody all the time, especially me. So I appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, you're speaking like a true podcast host. You have to mess with the different times from Pacific to East Coast, and then scheduling and things. So, yeah, congrats on all your success at the show. The studio looks great in there, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's it's been kind of fun. I started it out just to test it with just had a table and would have guests come in, and we'd sit across from each other, and sometimes we'd go for 2-3 hours, and I was like, this is not sustainable. I was like, we got to figure something else out here. So we decided we're going to build a studio, started working with Ironclad, and they kind of brought it all together for me and made it and do a real show. So it actually makes sense. And it's not just a bunch of rambling. Still a lot of rambling that goes on, but for the most part, we keep it together. And I have my, Avery is sitting behind the table right now. You can't see her, but you'll hear her sometimes if she has to come in here and tell me to continue and keep moving on. But usually it's my wife, and she's holding up signs and telling me all right, let him talk, move on.
Well, it's great. You got to kind of fine tune your voice in podcasting, and it takes a while, and definitely some insight from outside sources help. So yeah, it's nice that you have your wife that can pass you on notes when you get long-winded or need to get back on subject. So yeah, I may need to find somebody like that for sure.
Well, it's it's different because in football, I was a great interviewer. So I would being interviewed was easy, because they were asking you questions and I would just answer honestly. And it was never when they're trying to trick you and trying to catch you into saying something, so you just don't do it. So now that I'm on the other end of that, I try to do the same, as to where I'm not I'm trying to set people up for success, not for, to sound stupid or to, make a comment they shouldn't make, or, speak out of something onto something that they don't really know about, so it's been pretty interesting and pretty fun. So I'm super excited about this one because, in my mind, as far as bow hunting goes, you're the guy, you are the epitome of a bow hunter. If they were going to put a picture of a bow hunter in the dictionary, I think Brian Barney is that guy, cause just the way you go about it is, you do everything the right way, I think. And it's, I really appreciate it. And I think that the community appreciates it as well, cause it's authentic, cause I think there are a lot of guys out there that try to make it look like they're public land bow hunting, and they're really not, it's a different animal to do it, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. Cause you host a podcast, via, Eastmans, right? So it's the Elevated Podcast on Eastmans. Yeah, I've been on the show. That was 2 years ago, but so we got to do an update. And, so what it's like to try to interview somebody, and, some people just don't want to talk, or, you know, it's just hard. You're like dragging it out of them. So let's just talk about your life real quick, because that's where I want to start. I just want to talk about like just a quick synopsis of like your childhood, where you grew up, how you got into bow hunting, just quick, just run through that real quick. And then we'll talk about how you ended up turning into a career.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks a bunch. That's like the greatest compliment I could receive, especially from another accomplished bow hunter. So that means the world to me. So yeah, I was raised in the Pacific Northwest around Olympia, Washington, and grew up and, really got into sports as a young man. I was into wrestling, really grabbed a hold of me. So, early years, I tried out everything, the baseball, the football, basketball, but wrestling, they recruited me because I was a small kid. They needed a 75-pounder in 7th grade. And so I fit the bill, and I just had great coaching. And the further I went in that sport, as I, got to be a freshman and wrestled 101, and then stepped up to 108 and 115, eventually a whopping 115 pounds as a senior. But yeah, I fell in love with wrestling and had great coaching, and I just learned like these great life lessons. Like the harder I worked at something, the more I could achieve, and I really put everything into it. And that was, the running miles and the training. That was wrestling collegiate. That was wrestling freestyle, Greco. That was coaching kids. I was just absolutely all in, and fell in love with it. Hunted at a young age. There was hunting in my family. Everybody was rifle hunters. But at the age of 13, my dad was building a house, and I really wanted to get into bow hunting. And so I worked the whole summer, and he bought me a bow for all my work for the entire summer. So I had my first bow and started bow hunting, and eventually got all my family to transfer over to bow hunting because I saw some success early on, and had some success with like a cow elk and a black-tailed deer and a couple things. But my wrestling career came to an end after high school. I didn't go wrestle in college, went to work as a carpenter, and had this dream about more opportunities. And my dad had talked about this place in Montana, and I thought, boy, that sounds pretty good. So at 19, moved out with all my items, which barely filled up a truck, and moved to Montana and immersed myself in the outdoors out here. Got a carpentry job, and just basically loved every second of it. And I was able to transfer like a lot of my passion from wrestling into bow hunting. And so I was just paying my dues and trying to get experience. I was rifle hunting at the time, bow hunting at the time. I'd hunt bears, I'd hunt sheds, and they had long seasons out here. And so just immerse myself into it. And as I started to get further down my journey, I really loved getting close and the challenge of bow hunting and the preparation. And so I committed to bow hunting only, and started traveling across the United States, going on these adventures, and just believed in really working at my skill set. And back then there was no bow hunting fitness, but I started to incorporate this hard work from my wrestling, these running miles, and lifting, and working on my backcountry savvy, my hunting instincts, working on my shooting, keeping it together during the moments of adrenaline filled excitement. And so just really worked at my craft. And then through that, started sharing a lot of my hunts, started finding consistent success sharing my hunts through writing, and then got the attention of Eastmans. I had been published in their magazine a handful of times for good critters I had harvested. And then they said, "Hey kid, what about writing a pro staff for us? Do you got any ideas?" And so the next day I sent them about 30 ideas. I think they were expecting a couple ideas, and I've been writing for the guys ever since. And through that, started the podcast in 2014, Eastmans Elevated. It's been a great venture for me, and then got some filming opportunities, and just reinvested in myself. Like a lot of the writing, the filming, the podcast, I started that all for free, and reinvesting in myself is believing in myself, and just built it brick by brick to where eventually I had an outdoor industry career, which is a bit like wanting to be a movie star, wanting to hunt for a living, but I was able to accomplish it just by building it slow, and really by by walking the walk. Like the information that I give out is from experience, and it's just the path that I've taken to find consistent success in a real difficult endeavor. And so I share that with guys, and guys connect with it and gravitate towards it. And then, I'm able to build a good following, and then able to put out some good videos, good podcasts, and live the life that I always dreamed about, really.
Yeah. Which is, you hit it right on the nail, right on the head with the hunting for a living. It's just because you see a lot of guys that try to do it. You can see that they almost lose the love for the hunting, because it's, the hunting isn't about killing, it's about the experience and the journey and the work and all of that comes into the hunt. So social media has made it about the kill. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are like, well, I spent all this money on production and, I have to get a kill, so instead of like, putting themselves in like a challenging situation, they take the easy route and go on these pretty, the easier hunts on private land and stuff like that, and spend the money to do that, which is creating unrealistic expectations. I always compare it to like the Kardashians, right? Like the Kardashians are creating these unrealistic expectations for young girls to like what life is actually really like and what it looks like. And like body dysmorphia, all that stuff, so it's like, guys are like, they'll kill a nice elk, and then they're like, get on their social media and see a guy killed like a, 400-inch bull. And they're like, well, damn, I only killed like a 300-inch bull. Well, who cares? It doesn't matter. The fact is that you went out there and you got it done. That's what matters, and I just really dislike that side of the industry. Unfortunately, you're always going to have douchebags, and every industry is going to have that. We had it in the NFL, seeing it in the hunting industry now, but for the most part, man, most guys are pretty cool, and it's not super ego driven, but there are those guys out there, and unfortunately it gives everybody else a bad name, so I want to talk about the wrestling, because I wrestled in high school too. And it was the same thing, man. Like it was the hardest sport I ever did. I'd never in my life have I worked that hard, like it's because it pushes you to another level, because there's nobody else out there to blame but yourself. If you lose on that mat, it's just you and another guy. And usually the guy that's in the better shape, that you might get out wrestled, but like if you get out wrestled, you'll probably just get tech fault or something, you know what I mean? But like to have another man like hold you down on your back, like that's just like, to me, that's like the ultimate dominant. Like you want to dominate somebody, take them to the ground, put them on their back, and then hear a ref slap the mat. Like that was just the best feeling ever. And then stand up and get your hand raised. Like that was the best feeling to me. And the training that goes into being in shape for like a 9-minute match is, because to me, and a heavyweight, we're going overtime. And if you're wrestling somebody good, we're going overtime, that's just the way it was. So you have to be in shape for 9 minutes of wrestling. And that might not sound like a lot, but go wrestle somebody for 30 seconds and you're gassed afterwards, so, it's just incredible the amount of training that goes into it. So I took that same approach in football, and I take that same approach with hunting, because that's the last thing I want, is to be out there and get gassed and not be able to make it to the top of a ridge or something, because, because you know how it is. Once you get a deer or an elk or something, once they're in position and the wind is right, you got to go. Like you can't mess around, because that wind will switch like that, and it's all dependent on the wind. Like to me, the wind and thermals are everything. Once you figure that out, then you've actually figured something out. It took me a long time. I started bow hunting when I was 13. It took me till now and I'm still trying to like perfect when the sun's coming up and when my thermals are going to rise and all this other, so I got to get above it first. So that's the thing, man. Guys don't get into shape, and they don't work out. They don't do any of that stuff. And then they come out and try to Western hunt and they get their butt kicked and they're like, oh, this is stupid. Like I wasn't able to kill anything. All we did was hike around. It's like, well, yeah, you might've hiked around a lot, but it's because you couldn't go whenever you needed to go. And you had to move really slow through everything. And you couldn't just, your cardiovascular wasn't there. And that's unfortunately, I think what shies a lot of people away from it. And they say, I'm going back east and sitting in the tree, so, which is fine. I love whitetail is what kicked off my love for bow hunting. When I was 13 years old, it was the same way. I had a hand-me-down PSE and shot my first whitetail buck, just a little fork and horn, just a little guy. But to me, I still get just as jazzed up at that deer as I do when I shoot like a 150 or something like that. Like it's the same amount of excitement for me. You know, a 130-inch whitetail walks through, I'm shaking, I'm jazzed up, you know, like it doesn't matter. And I think when you lose that, that's when you should probably put the bow down and find something else to do, because that's what it's about. You know, it's putting yourself in position, outsmarting that animal and all that. So when did you pick an animal that, like, what is your favorite animal to hunt? Cause I already know what it is. I just want everybody else to know.
Well, I like all opportunities, and I love the adventure of being able to travel to different places, take on different species in different habitats. So it's tough to put my thumb on. If you ask me mid-September what my favorite animal to hunt is, it's an elk all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to say that my favorite animal to hunt is a mule deer. I love the high country, the extreme rugged terrain above 12,000, above 13,000 feet, steep cliffs and chutes and alpine bowls. I love being able to hunt them there. I love being able to hunt them in November during the rut with like deep snow, big mountains, bitter cold, and big like rutted up bucks. Like their neck gets big, they're hard horned, dark antlers, chasing does around. So pound for pound, if I had to pick, would be mule deer, but I do have such a love for other species and other adventures.
Yeah, elk hunting's my favorite. It's just such a short amount of time that you get to do it. So that's the great part about Montana. That's what I love most about Montana. Same with Wyoming, it's kind of like that too, but Montana's great because when you draw like your deer tag, you know, your general deer tag, that's good all the way through December, right? Like it's September to December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have very long seasons. We have a 5-6 week bow season, 5-6 week rifle season, but you hit the nail on the head with the elk. Like there is something that is the most thrilling hunting I do. It's aggressive. You have to rely upon your instincts. You have to make all the right moves to make it to come together. But there's just sweat pouring down your brow, and you're racing to cut off the herd, and they can just roll country. Like they love to walk uphill.
Oh.
They can roll so much country. They're vocal. There's no more thrilling animal to hunt on planet Earth, as far as I'm concerned, than a bull elk during the rut of September, man. It's the best.
It is. It really is the best. There's nothing like it. And people that have never done it, you know, they're like, yeah, whatever, you know, like they just don't get it. But once you are when you're in the forest and in that big timber and you just hear a bull just let out a big old scream, and then like a chuckle, like when you start hearing how they interact with each other and hearing the cows chirp, and it's just, it's funny. I say cows chirp and people are like, what is that? And I'm like, they really do. Like, it's like a chirp that they make, you know, it's like, meow, meow. Like when you're hearing that and hearing them communicate with each other, man, there's nothing like it. And then, you know, I'm 1 for 3 in the last 3 years on bulls. Just because it is so hard to get yourself, and I've been in great position on bulls every year. But to make it happen perfect, where the bull's coming in, he's going to come into within, because I don't like shooting really far at bulls. I'll do it if I have to, but I prefer not to. I'm going to, like, if it's like the last day of the season and I got a good broadside shot at 80 yards, maybe, but there's a lot of slip between a cup and a lip with a bow. You know what I mean? And it's just, I've had too many things go wrong. And the last thing I want to do is wound an animal. Yeah, but my first bull that I killed, he came in, I was in New Mexico, all the way down in the Lincoln National Forest. And we had hunted so hard for 5 days, and there's bulls everywhere. And we kept getting like satellite bulls would come in there and like kind of ruin the game for it. Like they would come in there and just like make the bull take his cows and leave. And we'd be like, oh, you know, it kept happening over and over again. And at one point I was like, man, there's too many bulls in here. Like I said that. And and my buddy looked at me, he was like, what did you just say? And I was like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. I was stupid. But finally, when it happened, man, it was like this bull, we had 3 bulls that were like kind of responding back to us. And my buddy, and that's the other thing that people don't realize, is that like, you're not going to call a bull to yourself. You have to get somebody to call for you and put them like 150 yards, like in the right direction, where you know that bull is going to maybe come travel through, and you got to be on that corridor where he's going to come through. And that's the hard part. That's the hard game that you play, because that bull could decide, you know what, I'm going to go down this way and come around. And it's like, well, now you're screwed because the wind is going to be totally wrong for you over there. And that's kind of what happened over and over again down in New Mexico. And then until finally we got one to come up over the hill, and he was like 30 or 42 yards, just perfectly broadside, screaming the whole way. And I was able to stick him. And it was just like a dream come true for me, because I grew up in the East Coast where a Western elk hunt just was way out of touch for me. Like, it was something that I never imagined me being able to do. So for that to come through, that was my first season out of the NFL. And I just picked it, it was like, I picked it back up and was like, could not wait to get back into bow hunting. And in 15 days, in a 10-day period, I killed so it was 10 days, 3 states. I was able to kill with my bow a bull elk in New Mexico. Then I went up to Wyoming and killed my first mule deer, double drop time buck. Just got so lucky somehow. Like, I was Brian, literally I was taking a poop in the middle of the field. Like, I was just pooping, in the morning, you drink your coffee and everything. Like, I was like, we're not really seeing anything move. So like, I just like, and then my buddy goes, I think there's a deer, I think there's something over there. So we went over and there was these kind of like these old train tracks, this big hump. And we got up there and there's this mule deer walking right to us. And he came and he walked up he walked like a mile. We followed him for about a mile before I finally got him to like be in position. And I was able to put like a 50-yard shot on him and smoked him. And it was just like, I can't believe that just happened. And then I still had a mule deer tag for Colorado. So we came down to Colorado the next day and found this big giant forking horn, like giant fork. Like, he was like 9 years old. He was huge. And they were like, yeah, we've been trying to get him for like 3-4 years. He's just too smart. And we just got lucky, caught him in the middle of the field. And I got into the creek and I literally walked waist deep water for like, I don't know, half a mile. It was not cold. It was perfect. The wind was ripping though. And it was ripping in the right direction. And he happened to be walking that way. And I caught him like perfectly at like 78 yards or something. And that was the last opportunity I was going to get to see him. And so I slung one and smoked him too. Went through both shoulders. And I couldn't believe, I was like, this is easy. I could, I'm crushing it. And I was immediately humbled the next season, because that season was great. I had killed a bear with my bow. I had killed, like I said, an elk and 2 mule deer, a whitetail in Ohio. And then I killed that mountain lion, that giant mountain lion, So I was like, I was like 6 for 6 on hunts. I was like, I'm crushing it right now. Like, this is awesome. And then the next year I got super humbled. We went down it was another, I was lucky enough to get a tag in New Mexico again. But in even a bigger bull unit, and chased the same bull around for 7 days, and had one opportunity at him, and he was bedded at 150 yards, and the wind was perfect. And I just needed these other cows to kind of feed up a little bit just to be safe. And that was the mistake. I waited too long, and some other guy came in from the other way with the wind to his back and blew the whole herd out. And he was still to this day, the biggest bull that I've ever seen. But he was super ruddy, just would not come to a call though. Like, cause in New Mexico, they do 2 seasons. And that first season, I think he had a lot of guys ripping calls at him. So he just was like, if I hear a call that's not like right next to me, I'm not checking it out. I'm just going to get up and go. So every time we'd call at him, he'd leave. So we'd followed him for like 12 miles that morning. Finally got him bedded, and that guy blew it out. And then it just would not come together the rest of the time. And then I went up to Montana with Matt Singer right after that, and we got skunked. They had a couple opportunities, and just like he was calling for me, and I had this bull, I was working this bull, and that bull circled and came right to him. He said, dude, I could have touched his nose. I was like, I can't believe it. So it's just the frustration, but those hunts were I remember those hunts that I wasn't successful on even more than I do the one I was successful on, because it was so much fun. Just like the failure that you learn so much in failing. Like, it's just the way it goes. You're going to learn what not to do. And maybe next time I'll try this, or maybe next time I'll try that. So what would you say if there's one piece of advice when it came to elk hunting? What would you say because I asked Corey Jacobson this and Cliff Gray, what would you say the number one thing that people do wrong on an elk hunt.
First off, that's amazing, man. That dream season you had on that bull. It's like it's magic when it comes together. They are so dang difficult to outsmart. And the older they get, the smarter they get, or the more evolved their instincts get. They really do keep themselves safe inside the herd. Don't respond to calls. I'd say like the one mistake, my answer is going to be drastically different than Corey Jacobson or Cliff Gray, because I don't use calls at all. I hunt a lot of high pressured areas, and high pressure doesn't mean that I'm combat hunting. Like I can still go find my own experience, but I'm really targeting these larger age class giant herd bulls that don't respond very good to calls, or they do respond to calls, but to get them to commit and come in and leave their cows to come see you is very difficult. And so I play this game where I spot and stalk and I stay really silent, and I'll echolocate by their bugles and where their sounds and noises are coming from. And then I just kind of take what the elk give me. I move into 100 yards and I kind of know what I can get away with and what I can't. So I know when I have to freeze, let the herd work over a hillside, and then I'll close in again. And I like elk hunting because it's so aggressive that you have to make moves on elk. You can't make this calculated, methodical plan to sneak into 30 yards of this bedded bull, because they bed in thick cover. Very rarely do you stalk them in their beds. They're always on their feet and they're moving, and they cover a ton of country. And so, I just go silent, and I move slow, I move quiet, and I'm able to wait until that bull makes a mistake or that herd makes a mistake, and then capitalize. And the advantage it gives me is the elk don't know they're being hunted. They're just elk being elk. And if I don't kill him that morning, I haven't bumped him. I haven't given him my win. He doesn't know that he's hunted. So then he's going to come out that evening. And I kill a lot of bulls in the evening because they feed all night long. So they come to parks and they feed throughout the night, and then they move back to thick cover for the day. So in the evening, they're coming out of this thick cover. They're coming into these parks and in open meadows to feed on the grasses throughout the night. And when they do that, I can keep my eyes on them and I can move in the shadows. And then also in the evening, like you talked about winds, it's a higher understanding of winds. If you could take one variable out of bow hunting, like there is more stalks busted by wind than anything else. And you mentioned thermals, like there's directionals and there's thermals. There's a way the winds move through the mountains. And so this higher understanding of winds makes you more effective when you do get an opportunity at a big bull. So in the evening, basically the sun goes down, and so it starts shading the hillsides. When the hillsides get shaded, that air starts to cool, that air starts to drop and fall. And that's what you call like a thermal wind. And that thermal wind gets really consistent downhill. So now I know I can approach these elk from downhill and be able to move in with a good consistent wind. So I've taken that variable out of the equation. So like as far as mistakes guys make, I think, whether you're calling, whether you're spot and stalking, just really like honing in or tapping into your instincts, so when to move and how aggressive to get. And I think it comes with experience. You can definitely pick up tips from writings and podcasts, but you have to implement that into your own hunting. But I think like real calculated plays, I think you can't make any mistakes when you're stalking a bull. And I think keeping the element of surprise is everything. And that's, calling or spot and stalking is moving in close when you're in their bubble, when you start calling to him. So he has no option but to come check you out or grab his cows and go away. So there's like some different tactics you can make there. But I think just really tapping into your elk hunting instincts and trying to minimize your mistakes on them. But they're so dang difficult. The older they get, the more difficult they are. And like you say, you can hunt them for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, cat and mousing a bull, and never get a shot at him, never get an opportunity. And it's part of the thing that really hooks us. And it's what hooked you, like on that good year you had, is the whole challenge of it. Like it is the ultimate challenge that takes all this preparation, takes everything you have physically, and then mentally keeping your head in it. Like it's an endurance sport. You talked about being in good shape to close the distance on a bull, but you got to keep putting this effort, like your 12-mile day after day after day. And like a 10-day elk hunt is way more endurance than doing, a marathon, a 26.2 marathon. I can do a marathon in 3 hours. This elk hunt is going to take me 10 days of everything I have, day after day after day. So you have to keep putting that effort and really keep your head in the game. But yeah, man, it's the ultimate. That's why we love it and we're drawn to it.
Yeah. It's, people are like, oh, what's like the most you've hiked in a day? I'm like, I did last year in Colorado here. I did a day that was like 16 miles and we did 4,200 feet vertical because I was in a really good unit. And I was like, I kind of know this unit a little bit, but I know I kind of have a feeling where they're going to be. But the only way I didn't know there was another way to get there. I thought you had to just like bust your ass up there or get horses. And I'm just like I don't want to deal with the horses. So I was like, let's just hike up there. And it took us all day. And when we got up there were bulls and cows everywhere. It was just loaded up there. But the problem is it's so drastic of country that like, I was like, I didn't bring anything. I should have brought something. If I was just sleeping up here, I'd have a bull killed them. I know it because they were all talking back to us. So like, that's the first part. If they'll talk back, I can probably get in there and make a move. The hard part is being 6'6" and 280 pounds. Like that's the hard part because I don't hide well. I do everything I can to be sneaky, but it's like, it's like you said, man, you gotta be aggressive. So that's the mistake that I've made is that sometimes I'll sit and wait too much and overthink it. And then now the opportunity is gone because that opportunity is there and it's going to last a couple seconds and you got to go. And there's times especially this year where I was like, man, I should have just moved in there instead of waiting for him to come. We had this big bull I had him at 55 yards twice. He just was in the timber and wouldn't step out where I had good cover and they couldn't see me. And he had a bunch of cows with him and they couldn't see me. I should have moved up into that a little bit and got up there and tried to find a lane. But I didn't. And I was just playing it safe and made them the same mistake twice. And I was like, I'm not making that mistake again. And Brian, I'd swear I had another bull that was doing the same thing. And I had him in the timber and I went to move on him. And I might have stepped on the loudest spot in the forest because it made so much noise. I was so sneaky the whole time. And I was like, I'm doing great right now. I'm sneaking on these things so great. And I stepped into this, like, it was one of those, I was looking at these cows to make sure they didn't look at me. And I stepped and it was one of those things where it made so much noise that it scared the shit out of the elk. Like it scared them all and they all busted. And I was like, I can't believe that I just did. This is like a 4-hour stalk that I just did. And I just screwed it up with one step, but that's what keeps you coming back. Cause it was like, I was so close, so yeah.
And the evolution of a bow hunter, right? Is like you learn that mistake on that bull and now you said you won't make that mistake again. So you're evolving as a hunter in these plays you're making. And it's tough to describe on a podcast, but you have all the pressure on you when you're getting a chance or you're getting close to these elk. And those moves you have to make 100 right decisions to be able to kill that bull. And you mess up one of those or don't capitalize on the opportunity you see. And it's tough because you have to go all in. Like you might spook that elk like you did stepping on that stick, going for him, trying to close in, but you're just trying to factor all this in. And this goes like to your hard drive that's hardwired in, that the next time you have these decisions to make, like you don't think of that specific instance, but it all factors into your decision making for next time and makes you a better bow hunter. So you're evolving as these years and these seasons go on. You're getting better and better at capitalizing on these opportunities. When you see that giant bull, it gets you excited, man. It's beautiful. I love it.
Well, especially on public land, man, it's so fun because the other factor is other people. There's other people hunting in those same areas. So like you have to take that into account, you have to, and to me, I just try to use them. Right. So like whatever they're doing, I just try to like, I'm not that guy that's going to go bust somebody's hunt. Like I really think that that's one of the dirtiest things you can do. Like, that guy probably put in a ton of work to get to end position there and you're going to go ruin it for him. Because I've had it happen to me. So I tried to do my best if somebody's doing it. So I just so like, well, I'll put myself in position to where if he busts these elk, I'll be there waiting, and stuff like that, which makes it even more fun because things just happen sometimes out there and you just get lucky, like a guy makes a mistake like I did, busts them up. Like when I busted those elk, they ran straight to this guy at the top of the mountain and he ended up shooting that bull. And I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, great. I was like, that's awesome. You know, there's plenty of bulls to go around. Like, I'm really happy that somebody, you know, had an opportunity. But he was like, dude, I just was kind of sitting here, you know, making some cow calls, trying to locate a bull. And next thing I know, a whole herd comes right up and a bull stopped right like 25 yards right in front of me, just stood there. I was like,
Well, yeah, and it's that competition is a factor in it, you know, and yeah, I like it drives me more, you know. It's like you have to be the first one to the trailhead or the first one that's hiking in, so you have to be up early. You know, the elk are usually where people aren't, and so you have to figure out like where's the hunting pressure coming from and where are the elk going to refuge or where are they going to hold up at, and really like there's opportunity out there, and I love public land because you know we have the biggest ranch around. Like we've got the biggest rugged peaks, we've got millions and millions of acres that, you know, if you don't find elk in one spot, you can be mobile and move. And I really don't like combat hunting. I definitely, if somebody's in front of me, they have to play on those elk. I'm not going to go screwed up, just like you said. Like there's a respect between hunters. And I think even if somebody does mess up your hunt, hopefully it wasn't intentional. You know, sometimes it's just lack of knowledge, like that guy moving in with bad wind in and through there. Sometimes they get excited and they don't have the skill set and they mess up a play. But for the most part, like, you know, when I'm hunting public lands, I find my own experience. I go find the places where guys aren't. I go find where the elk are. And, you know, 9 out of 10 times or 19 out of 20 times, I have the elk all to myself to make plays, or the mule deer, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I actually like that competition factor. I think it drives me to go further, pushes me to go harder. You can't be lax. You've got to be there hours before daybreak, hiking in the dark. Like it just, you have to step up your level of play to be able to give yourself a chance of success. So yeah, it really doesn't bother me much. And I love like all the places I get to go and all the adventures I get to have. And I couldn't have that without this public land. So yeah, I don't seem to mind it much, but I love I think creative thinking is rewarded, like game plans are rewarded. So like the way you're thinking about this, if a guy's in front of you, you're thinking of escape routes. So he's going to pressure the elk there, he's got the play. It's like, well, great, I'll move to that saddle because I know elk like saddles, and that's where the deep dark timber is. Like I think they're gonna that's their escape route. So now my play is to move to this escape route and try to play them there, you know. And so yeah, you can almost use the hunting pressure to your benefit without messing up somebody else's hunt. And yeah, and I just really believe like it seems like, you know, the more miles you put on or the steeper hikes you do or some of these places that we get, you can just separate yourself from the hunting pressure. In a lot of these places I hunt, you know, I don't see a hunter in multiple days of hunting there, much less like when I'm into the elk. It's just me versus them. And so I think you can still create like really good encounters, really good adventures, really good experiences, even hunting public land.
oh yeah, well, and it all depends on the state, you know, like Colorado that was my first experience elk hunting, was an over the counter hunt here in Colorado. And it was just like we were at the trailhead at, you know, 3:30 in the morning, and there's still people that had already beat us. I'm like, how are they getting here? Are they just sleeping here? Like they have to be. There's no way somebody beat us on this trail. You know, so the next day we wake up even earlier, you know, it's like, okay. And you play that game, and we went 4 days, never seen an elk. Never seen one. Didn't even hear one bugle. But there was fresh sign everywhere. And I just showed you how those pressured elk are not going to talk. Like they're just not going to talk. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite sponsors, Juniper Mountain Coffee. Coffee without compromise. You're getting high quality coffee without the high prices. This is an American company that stands behind their values. They stand behind their coffee. These guys make some of the best coffee I've ever had. It's a coffee I drink every morning. Juniper Mountain Coffee works directly with the farmers, paying fair wages, and that way you have no middleman. There's no BS, no garbage. You're getting high quality products. So go check them out at junipermountaincoffee.com. When you talk about the spot and stalking, like, can you walk me through kind of how do you find them? How do you say they're not talking? How do you find a bull that's not going to talk? How do you even find them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I hunt like a lot of open terrain, but even in timbered country, like they come to these parks and these openings to feed. And so what I'm doing is I'm either echolocating or I'm using my glass. So I'm finding master vantage points or I'm finding ridge lines, and I use a mobile vantage point where I'm working up the ridge line. Elk are only going to be active. Like you find those special days where they're active all throughout the day, bugling all throughout the day. But normally you get a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening. If it's really hot, you might only get a half an hour to an hour in the morning, hour in the evening. So being on these prime vantage points, being on these ridge lines, using my glass, echolocating, like listening for bugles, and the rut ebbs and flows, and even in high pressure units, these elk will have to bugle to in the more competition, the more they're going to bugle. So if a herd bull has satellite bulls, he's going to have to bugle. But if there's no cows to be bred, he doesn't have to call, and he knows that, but they're still going to be fired up, they're still going to rut even in high pressure units, but they do a lot of their rutting at night. And so what I do is I use the night as well. And I'm not hunting at night, I can't shoot anything at night, but what I can do is I can travel roads or I can travel ridge lines, and I can get above big basins and I can listen. And if I hear them bugling down in there, well, now I have some elk located for my morning hunt because I located them in the night. And so, like, I try to get on the elk schedule. I'll actually take naps in the middle of the day. I don't hunt too hard in the middle of the day. I have this focused intensity in the morning, and that starts an hour or 2 hours before daybreak, just like you. And how many times have you left the trailhead early and you hear those bulls bugling early? Well, now you got a bull to go to. Or you hunt them late till dark and hiking out, all of a sudden you hear a bull bugle. Now you got one located for that night. So I use a combination of echolocating, and I'm a spot and stalker, so I really like using my glass master vantage points, mobile vantage points in ridge lines and drainages. And really for elk, I just stay mobile. Like elk, there's a lot of country they're not, even in the best units. Like elk are nomadic by nature. So elk move from feeding feature to bedding feature to different feeding features, different bedding features. Very rarely are they just holed up in the same basin for days on end. So they travel using this network of different features. So you could be in the best elk spot on planet Earth and go in there and there's no elk in there because they've already moved through or they're not there yet. So I try to keep mobile and cover a bunch of country, just like you were doing, or how you described that 16-mile day, that 12-mile day. But I'm covering country at the right times of day to be able to hear them, to be able to see them as they're moving through those parks, as they're feeding and moving into that cover. And then once I have one located, that's when it gets fun. That's when I start playing this spot and stock game, and it's a bit of cat and mouse. It's like I move to where the elk are, and you have to keep the element of surprise, and you have to see the elk before they see you. So I even follow them in the timber, even thick, deep, dark timber. I'll follow them. Once I hear him bugle, I can estimate, okay, he's about 300 yards. I think he's over this ridge over there. I can hurry to this next ridge line, and then I need to really slow down once I get there, and I need to look in my peripheral, my left, my right, make sure there isn't a cow standing there. I need to take a few steps, and I need to glass. I really slow down. I need to locate him, and then once I see him, then I can start to make plays. But I just take what the elk give me. I use the ungulation, the topography to move in close, but there's a lot of times I'm just shadowing the herd and I have no chance to shoot that bull because there's so many eyes. I'm just moving with them through the timber. But as they get to their bedding feature, like they start to slow down and they start to feed around, that's a good chance to move in and try to kill them. But I never get reckless with my stock. I don't want to give myself away. I want to play this shadowing game for as long as I can. And sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 days I'm playing this shadow game on the same herd and they don't know that I'm hunting them. But the moment I see them go over a rise, I can race to that rise and they're in bow range over the other side. So those are like the opportunities that I'm trying to look for. I've just kind of learned what I can get away with and what I can't.
Yeah. And so when you're putting those couple day long stalks on an animal, are you just sleeping on the ground, or are you packing in a tent? Like, what are you taking with you?
Yep. So I have different ways I go about it. Like I love having a lightweight camp on my back, being able to move with the elk, sleep just off where they are, like keep targeting them. But I also do it day hunting too. And it just means putting a lot of miles in the dark. And so, I've got this bull located. I'm making plays on them in the evening. It doesn't come together on the morning. Like I don't follow them. Like once they're starting to bed, Like I'll follow them into the timber when they're on their feet, but once they bed, there's so many eyeballs looking around for danger, and it's thick in there that I know I have a better chance to kill that bull, to leave him unspooked and try to kill him in the evening when he comes into that feeding feature into those parks. So during the day, if I followed a bull in the morning and I'm hiked in 10 miles or 5 miles or whatever the distance is, a lot of times, yeah, I'm just sleeping in the dirt or hanging out in the dirt for all day long for that evening play when they're back on their feet, they're back bugling, they're back moving. I don't kill them that evening. Like, great if I can sleep there, if I've got my camp with me, if I've got like a little bivy camp set up to where my wind isn't going to drift to them and then I'm on them in the morning. Or if I'm day hunting, it's just hiking out in the dark and then hiking back in the dark to be at that exact same spot in the morning to target that bull again for another all day hunt. So yeah, it kind of depends on what I have with me and if I'm day hunting or whether I'm backpack hunting. But I do like the day hunting approach because you can move a lot of country lightweight, and then you end up putting on a bunch of miles because you're back and forth in the dark to get to those locations. But if there aren't elk there or I don't find them, it's easy. I'm mobile. I can move and go to a different trailhead, different spot, dive in there until I can find elk. So that's part of that being mobile. But yeah, different techniques depending on where I'm hunting and what I have with me.
Yeah, that's a really cool approach because I was talking to Corey about it. Corey's like, well, during the middle of the day is when I, have most of my success. And I'm like, and he's like 90% success rate with his bow on elk, which is crazy. That's like, if somebody says like they have 25% success, you're like, wow, you're doing pretty damn good. Like that's a really good average. Cause like most people, I think that you go into mostly even a really good unit, archery, elk hunting, it's like an 11% success rate is like a really good success rate in that area. Right. So to have somebody that's at 90, and what he does is he goes to he'll walk those timber lines and those drainages, and he'll just rip bugles. And he said, he's like, I'm probably walking by a bunch of elk that aren't talking back, but there's going to be a bull that talks back. And that bull that talks back, I know I can get him. And that's that's kind of the game he plays, is he'll just rip bugles down into these spots where it looks like there should be elk in there bedded. And he's like, I'm within 150 to 200 yards of that bull, and I rip a bugle, he's probably going to come out. He's probably going to come check it out. And that's kind of how he does it. And I was like, man, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that, because I'm just not sneaky. Like, I'm just too big to be sneaking around in the timber. But I like the idea. I have tried the waiting in a park, like waiting for them to kind of come out. And I just always get, I don't know what it is, but I always get busted by these cows, man. They just always, like, I'll get by like 4 or 5 of them and they don't see me. And then like that one cow is just staring right at me. And I'm like, damn, how did she see me? Like I am tucked in here. Like I'm hiding really good, they see you, or the wind will just like swirl for just a second. And all it takes is for one of those elk to smell you and it's over. One of them to see you and it's over, so the bull usually doesn't see you. It's usually not the bull. Yeah, right. I've never been busted by a bull, ever. Yeah, it's always the cow.
Yeah, it totally is. There's like different approaches. There's different ways to skin a cat, and he relies upon his bugle, covering country, locating a bull that wants to play his game, and it works for him. He's able to be successful. And I commit totally the other way, where I don't have any calls and spot and stalk them, and that works for me. And I kind of feel like those herd bulls are really tough ones to call in, and those are the bulls that I'm targeting, is the biggest, oldest herd bull in and through there. And those bulls are the toughest ones to call in. And I just found that I was calling in a lot of satellites. And then I found the other thing is like those bulls that would come in on pins and needles looking for danger. And it was like, gosh, if I could just hunt an elk that was just feeding in a meadow, I think I could kill him. And, you start to tap into their senses, and like they see movement really well. But if they catch a little movement and you freeze, like if they didn't see a lot of you, or they didn't catch you totally moving or see that you're a human, they go back to feeding, go back to being an elk, don't know that they're being hunted. And so, yeah, I just I've tapped into this spot and stalking, being able to target the big herd bulls that I want, being able to keep the element of surprise, being able to cat and mouse. And it just works for me for targeting these bulls. But yeah, Corey Jacobson is equally as successful, and he uses the calls and traveling and middle of the day and getting a bull to fire off and play his game, and he's extremely successful at it and kills some great herd bulls as well. And so, yeah, there's like different approaches. And so I think you got to figure out like which tactics work for you. So exactly like you're saying, like you're twice the size as I, I'm like 5'7", 155, 160 pounds. I can hide behind a blade of grass, and so that works for me, but you got to find these tactics that you can implement into your own hunting. You build your own style of hunting. And whether, I've got a couple buddies, this is a good example. It's like, I've got one buddy that's so aggressive. He makes moves. He's covering country, covers a ton of miles. He sees an animal. He's making a stalk on him, and he's belly crawling in, and he's making these moves. But he moves through country quicker than I do. So it's tough to hunt with him because he spooks animals along the way. He'll blow up an elk, but then he'll go find another one. And he's just like really aggressive, but he finds success. That's his style of hunting. I have another buddy that is so patient and so slow, like it drives me nuts because we're working through the timber. We can't get anywhere. He's stopping every couple steps to glass, and he just moves so slow and so calculated. And that style works for him. He equally kills animals, and I'm somewhere in the middle. And so you have to like build your own style of hunting, and that's whether using calls, whether spot and stalking. And I think like the best approach would be able to implement all of these strategies and then have it like tools in your toolbox for when you find an elk and what's going to be most effective on it. And I'm not that good at it because I've perfected the skill of spot and stalk and I'm so committed. So there's days where I find bulls that are bugling in the middle of the day, where if I had Corey Jacobson's skill set, I would call that bull in and shoot him. And I did call a lot of bulls back in back in the day, but I've just gotten so far away from it. And now my skill set lies in the spot and stalk that I'm missing opportunities because I'm so committed to the way that I kill elk. So I think it's good to implement all these tactics and try to figure out what your style of hunting elk is.
Yeah. What works best for you, and that's what I always try to tell people when they ask me like, oh, well, how do you like to hunt them? I'm like, I like to hunt them. However, if they're going to play that day, then I'm hunting them like that. But if sometimes they're just not willing to play the game. So now I got to find something else to do. And that's when I start doing the whole sneaking game and I try to sneak on them. And I love doing that. Like I do. I love that the adrenaline that comes along with that of sneaking up on an animal. Like, for me, I get that with mule deer too. Like, an early season mule deer that's in velvet bedded with like 2-3 other bucks like that. It's every little sound. I take my boots off. I'm in my socks. Like I'm being so quiet that it's just like and as you close the distance, everything has to go right. And I love that. Like I absolutely love the adrenaline that comes with it. It's adrenaline because it's all this anticipation and you have to be patient. You're fighting. Your body just wants to go, your body's like, just go. Like he's right there. Just go get him. But you have to be so quiet in every movement and every little branch, every little, and that's the other thing, like sneaking through things. I got to be squatted down and I can't just crawl through there. I make more noise crawling through something than I do walking, so it's like, I got to be so quiet every little step. I'll do things like go through I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'll go through her playroom and I'll just try to walk through it and not look down at the ground without stepping on things. Like, and that's kind of how I'll just to goof around. Like it's a way to practice walking through the woods and being quiet, cause like you have to know if I step on that stick, it's going to make sound. If I step on those leaves, if I step on that bush, if I clip what happens to me a lot is my hat will clip things. So, okay, I'm going to move my hat backwards so that I don't have to worry about my bill catching on anything. Like it's those little things that the only way you learn that is through failure. Like, cause you've screwed it up and you're like, what went wrong there? It's like, oh, my hat, I can't tell you how many times my hat has just like clipped something and made a bush move. And that deer like looked and was like, oh, something's over there. So now I'm stuck for like 20 minutes and then maybe he'll chill out, but usually he's probably going to get up and go. Especially those high country mule deer. They're like super skittish. Like because they could deal with mountain lions and bears and, like they're not, and bobcats, like literally from the time they hit the ground running, they're trying to get away from predators. So they're high alert. It's not like these low country mule deer that are like kind of farm deer. They're a little dumber, they just don't deal with the same amount of pressure and they're used to people being around and they're on hiking trails or they're, farmers are around and stuff. So like you can get away with some more there, but what I've learned about in the high country, man, like those deer, you got to be so perfect. Everything has to be perfect. And then that deer has to screw up a little bit too for you to get him killed. And, I was hunting with Bo, you know who Bo Nickel is?
Yeah.
So Bo and I were hunting this
He's
group
a great human being. Yeah. Did a 6-hour shooting games. Yeah. He's a great guy.
Unbelievable. He and I actually own an outfit together now.
Oh, wow.
It's called 7T Outfitters. So if you ever want to come do some bird hunting or some mule deer hunting or elk hunting even down here in Colorado, let us know. We'll
how
hook it up
cool.
for you.
Yeah,
it's a good spot. We got a good spot out there. It's on the western slope. But anyways, we were hunting this group of 5 mule deer, and they were all super velvet. There was a 3x3 in there that was giant, and I know Bo had his eyes on him. So I was like, well, there's a 5x in there that like is really nice. So like, we'll just hunt the same herd. And, if I get an opportunity, if he's like, dude, just, I had an opportunity to shoot that 3x and I didn't, cause I know Bo wanted to shoot that deer really
That's
bad.
a good
He
friend.
was like, yeah, he was like really locked in on that. And I had an opportunity to shoot him and I didn't. But there was I had an opportunity where all 5 bucks were bedded under a cedar tree, and they were kind of out in the middle of, like, I had to kind of go way out of the way to get to them, to where they were at. So I did it, and I just took my boots off and I was like, I'm leaving my boots here. Let's go. So we go, and it's me and my camera guy, Levi, and he's little. He's just little. He's like your size. So he's like no problem sneaking through all that stuff, but it takes me a lot longer cause I got to be so much more quiet. And like, if I move fast, that's like something for them to see, you know what I mean? They just kind of see it. And then moving in the shadows, understanding like where the sun is coming down, and that like your shadow is going to cast, and that movement of your shadow will get them spooky. So, I know that there was another group of guys hunting these same deer too. So they had been pushed around a little bit. So they were like in a position where they had kind of eyes everywhere, but I knew that there was a cedar tree probably, I didn't know if it was 20, 30 yards behind them, that if I could get to that tree, I had a chance to shoot one of them. And I did. It was like a 400-yard stalk from the tree line. And I got out there and got to that tree, and it was 32 yards from the deer. And then they stood up, and the 5x stood up, and he was standing there broadside, and there was just a tiny hole through the cedar tree that I could, like, cause cedar tree, it's like there's shit going everywhere. There was a tiny hole that I knew that I could probably shoot through that and smoke him right there. And I was like, I think I'm going to shoot. I told my buddy, I was like, I think I could shoot him through that hole. And he's like, don't do it. And I was like, why? And he's like, because there's a branch coming right up the middle of it. And I just couldn't see it, cause I'm so focused on the deer, and like, I'm looking for a lane. And he's like, don't do it. And I was like, I think I could do it. I just kept going back and forth, like whether I should or shouldn't do it. And if I was by myself, I probably would have tried to make that shot, because I didn't see anything obstructing that one little lane. And at 30 yards, I'm shooting 80 pounds with a 33-inch draw. Like my arrow's going straight at 30 yards. Like I'm good, so I'm not worried about any kind of elevation drop or anything. Like that arrow's going to fly straight. And, he was like, don't do it. He kept telling me, don't do it. I'm telling you, do not do it. He's like, I was like, all right. So we waited there for like an hour, and the whole time I'm just looking through this hole, like I could shoot him right now. And then like I said, he's standing there for like 20, 30 minutes. And then he kind of sits back down, he gets back up again. And I was like, there was cars coming on the other side of that. There was probably like half a mile, but those cars were making them act like they just were like kind of spooky. I was like, I was using that to my advantage. Well, then I was like, great, I'm going to be patient, because those cars that are going back and forth there, those deer are going to get up and come towards us instead of going into that, because the wind's coming right at, in our face. So they could smell all that shit up there. They're going to come this way. Nope. They got up and walked the complete other way towards the road, towards the cars, crossed the road, and were gone. And I was so pissed. And I went up to that little hole, and he was right. There was about a pinky sized branch sticking right up in the middle of it. And my arrow would have hit it.
Mm-hmm.
It would have hit my arrow, and it would have knocked my arrow. I would have wounded that animal probably would have, gut punched him or something like that. And I would have never found him, cause it was just the shit that he would have went into was just so thick and nasty. And then there was like some private land on the other side that I knew we weren't going to be able to get to. And that's kind of where he was heading. But yeah, it was one of those situations where it's like, man, if I was by myself, I would have screwed that up for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even care that I didn't get to shoot him, because it was so much fun. And there was so much like adrenaline involved with that, being that close to 5 deer that don't know you're there. They had no clue I was there. I never spooked them or anything. They never knew I was there. So it was just like, okay, I could sneak, I could do it, but for some reason with these elk, I cannot get in close on them without these cows seeing me. They never hear me. It's always they hear me sometimes, but an old timer once told me, Brian, tell me if I'm wrong, that elk don't really care about sound. It's noise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like foreign sounds that like aren't normal to the forest, like crunching ground, like animals make, like elk are the loud. They're so loud going through the timber anyways. But like if they hear like your bow kind of ting up against something, or they hear like your clothes brush up against something, that's when they get spooky. Cause and that an old timer told me that like when I first started elk hunting, and I was like, that kind of makes sense.
I think there's definitely some truth to it for sure. I think, if they're moving through country, they're making a lot of noise. They don't really mind the noise so much. I mean, sometimes noise is a good thing when you're calling to kick rocks or to move brush or to make that illusion that you're elk. I think that
Rake a tree.
I think it can draw their attention though. I think like stalking them in a meadow, there's not a lot of sound going on. So if they hear a stick break from the timber, what they do is they look in that direction that noise came from, and now they're looking to confirm their suspicions. Now, if you move now or move one little arm, one little muscle, they catch it and they're out of there. So I think it can draw their attention to you depending on the scenario, but I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. And yeah, those elk they're just tough. You got to like kind of take what they'll give you. There's times when you just have to freeze in the timber and just watch them feed in front of you, and there is no moving in. It's like waiting for the right scenario where they're in the right position, where you have the right cover to move in. And so it's like this delicate dance of taking what they'll give you, closing in when you can, this real patient dance. But I love your mule deer stalk, man. That's why I love mule deer.
I loved it. It was so much fun.
You got to stalk into them. And then, it may take you 20 minutes to move 10 steps. Like you have to watch every footfall, keeping to the shadows, moving in. And you have to be, you said it, you have to be so perfect. And those mule deer are so wired. And like you say, like they've evolved thousands of years from avoiding mountain lions, and mountain lions are way sneakier than I could ever be. Like they actually have to jump on the mule deer's back and kill them with their tooth and claws, but if you ever watch a house cat or even a kitten, they're born with hunting instincts. The way they move through the brush, the way they freeze with just a little Tweety bird in front of them there, just waiting for the right moment to strike. And there's a lot that can be learned by watching these cats and the way they stalk. But yeah, that means, mule deer are the ultimate. They've got those big ears that hear sound. Same thing with them. They'll run from noises, but a lot of times they're going to hear that noise, going to look in that direction, look to confirm the danger. If they catch any movement, if they hear the noise again, then they're gone, So, yeah, it's, you never thought like growing up, I never thought that I'd want to be so quiet in the mountains, and like you say, shoes off and gravel makes noise. And so, a lot of these steep 40, 50 degree slopes, you're just kind of like hopping from rock to rock or in little spots, and you step on the gravel and it kind of slides and make a noise. And then you might have to sit there for 10 minutes just to make sure he doesn't hear another noise, doesn't catch you moving. And so they're like these so calculated and methodical stalks on these mule deer, and they just take the ultimate discipline. You talk about going under brush, like you're holding these yoga poses while crawling and under stuff and over stuff. It's like the most difficult thing. And then you get in close, and my saying is let the buck make the last move, which you did a really good job of on your stalk. Like, too bad you couldn't put that arrow through that little window of trees. But what you were doing is you were waiting in range and waiting for that buck to come up at you or come out of that cedar brush. So he's going to make the last move, expose himself, and then you're going to shoot him. Instead of you trying to sneak around the cedar bush to get a shot in on him, let him know you're there. Like the element of surprise is everything. And so, a lot of times you stalk into range, and then they test your patience. Like patience is a virtue. And boy, I mean, waiting for a buck to stand and walk out, and sometimes 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, you're sitting in the same position. It is so tough to sit still and patient for that amount of time, waiting for this opportunity. And so it's like this rare mix of this patience and making stalks, and they're calculated and methodical, and then they just live in some of the prettiest places of planet Earth. Like the mule deer will actually live above the elk. They live like where goats and sheep do. And so a lot of times, you're dancing on cliff edges and chutes and things that are really steep where, you do have your life in your hands, like making this stalk and this play. And I love that extreme terrain and what it takes to hunt those places. And the majority of times I'm by myself in those places. Like there's no other hunters around. It's me versus the buck. And then you're trying to kill this buck that's evolved 7, 8, 9 years old of avoiding mountain lions and other hunters. Like it's the ultimate, man. That's why I love hunting those things.
It's incredible. I did a mountain goat hunt this year up in British Columbia.
I saw that. Congratulations, man.
Dude.
What a hunt, dude. That's so awesome. Such extreme terrain. You sent me a couple videos, and the pucker factor was definitely like 10 out of 10.
Well, it's funny because after I do the same thing with when I go back and watch like old football film of me, and I'm like, what was I thinking? I can't believe it. I literally just like threw 350-pound dudes and then like tackled a running back. And then you think about like, how did I even do that? And it's the same, I get the same feeling about that mountain goat hunt. Cause some of the terrain that we were in, like you just, I don't know. I have this like ability to just kind of put fear aside. I think like, it's like I can hyper focus so much that I'm not thinking about the fear of falling or anything. I'm just like focused on the next step. But there were some times where I'm like, especially on the pack out, that was the pack out was the sketchiest part. Because I have like my 55, 65 pounds of camp on my back, plus another 100 pounds of mountain goat meat and cape and skull and my bow and all. Everything's packed on my back. And like, you're going down these things that are like, dude, one slip and I'm done. Like I'm gone. We were 350 miles from a road. Like they're not going to come get me. I'm going to be so mangled. I was with Aaron Snyder. I told Snyder, I said, listen, dude, if I fall, just like shoot me or something. Cause I don't like, I'm going to be so mangled at the bottom of this that just shoot me, please. Cause it was one of those things where it really was the other thing is like every rock you step on, you got to make sure that rock isn't going to roll, because if that rock rolls and pins your foot between another rock, like now that's going to be misery. You're going to break your leg for sure, cause we're talking about like 300-400 pound rocks. So it was super sketchy. And then we get down the steep stuff on the pack out. And now we're packing through like this, we're bushwhacking through grizzly country, and only one of us has a gun, so it's like, there's giant piles of fresh grizzly poop everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I got all this fresh meat on my back. I'm just like a walking snack right now, so it was super sketchy, man. And you don't even think about it in the moment. You're just like so focused on getting back to where you got to be. Cause it was like a 14-mile pack out, which sucked, but it was like the accomplishment of getting back was so nice. I took all my clothes off and jumped into a lake when I got back, cause I was just like exhausted.
That's so cool, man. You'll remember that forever. That's like living life to the fullest, man. It's true adventure, and your decisions have consequences, and you have to keep safe up and through there. But it seems like, when there's consequences and when you're making these decisions, like you're immersed in the wild in this game of predator prey, and you feel so alive. It's like it really, like, life is so nerfed, right? Everything's so safe, and sure, like cars are dangerous, but we don't really think about it much. Or our tap water comes out of our tap, and we get food at the grocery store. Like everything's pretty safe and pretty nerfed. But boy, you get out there in the wild and you take the safety bumpers off, and your decisions have real consequences, and you're reliant upon your wood sense. You're reliant upon your decision making, like your critical thinking, and then to try to harvest an animal with your bow and arrow on top of that and that type of terrain is like amazing. But I've never felt more alive than I do like on these adventures. I feel like I live this real fulfilling life. And I bet you that goat hunt will resonate with you for the rest of your life. Dude, what a wild adventure in a wild place on planet Earth. Like so fortunate that we get to take place in those things.
I know, man. I just felt and then it's crazy because when I was leaving, I was like, man, I don't want to leave. Like after, cause like you're so focused on like the main goal, right? The main goal, let's try to get a mountain goat, right? Like that's the goal. And then when it happens, you're like, damn, I don't want to leave. I just want to stay out there. Cause it was like, cause once you get into your groove and your routine, it's like, I really enjoy this. Like if it's really that's the other thing. It's, you have to make sure that it's for you, that you enjoy it, because if you're miserable out there, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. Like the most of the fun, the kill, you haven't heard me say anything about the kill, right? It was the hike in, the trying to find, like making sure your water's clean and making sure, that you're, cause that's the last thing you want, is to get some bacteria in your water or something, and you have some GI, funk going like that will make everything miserable. So you're doing everything you can to make sure you have clean water, and you're doing everything you can to make sure you're drinking enough water, and then getting enough calories in throughout the day. Making sure you have enough peak meals and stuff like that. Cause like the only way we're getting more food is if we kill something, or if we get a plane to drop us something somewhere. And that's like the only way we're getting food. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about a product that I've been using for a long time, over a decade. When I was playing football, one of my main staples in my diet was bison. I got my bison from Great Range Premium Bison. They make some of the finest cuts of bison you can get. These guys have ribeyes, ground bison, all the steaks that you want. My favorite part about Great Range is that you don't have to worry about antibiotics or growth hormones in their meats. Great Range Premium Bison is a family-owned company providing bison meat from family-owned ranches around the country. So please go check out greatrangebison.com. I always think about this because I love history and I love to like learn about the mountain men. Like imagine those guys. Like you're not just dealing with the elements, you're dealing with natives. You have zero communication with the outside world. Like you can't just like you can't just hit that your SOS on your Garmin and a chopper's going to come get you. Like you are like think about the balls it took to just, because a lot of those guys didn't even really know what they were doing. Mm-hmm. They just were like, oh, I'm just going to go out there and start trapping beaver. And they just went and they figured it out. And a lot of them died because they just didn't know what they were doing. And they learned the hard way. So the next guy had to learn the lesson of the first guy. So man, I just think about those guys and how tough they had to be, because they were spending months out there, just years. They would go on like these they call them the long hunters, because they'd go out there for a year and they'd be gone for an entire year. And nobody knew if they were going to live or die. And they would come back and hopefully natives didn't steal all their pelts and, they were good to go. But I always think about what it would be like that if there was one period of time where I could go back and kind of experience it, it'd be that one. That's the one that I'd want to go test and see if I could actually do it, cause I don't know if I could. I really don't. I don't know if I could make it. Cause I know what it's like to go out there with like good gear and good boots and good weapons and like good peak meals and not, having like making it's still hard with all that stuff. So now imagine I got to start my own fire. I got to kill my own food. I got to just like live off the land completely. So I always think about if I could really actually do it and what that would be like, and knowing there's no safety net. So that's something that, what do you think? Is there like a time period where you'd like love, is that it? Or is there
like
another
a good one, man? They were real men. That's like a different generation. That's a different form of grit and toughness and tenacity. Yeah. It's like, man, that's like true bravery too. Like I can't imagine disappearing in the mountains and you can't have a fire because the natives might see it or make them ransack your camp or you like, it would be an amazing time period to take part in. And I live in an area where there were trappers that were in this area, like Journal of a Trapper. That guy was right in the valley that I live in. And we find arrowheads from natives that lived and made a living in this country, and it's wild to find an arrowhead that you're like, man, that guy was doing the same thing I was doing. He was bow hunting animals, but it was for his survival, and it was thousands of years ago. And so yeah, it's really wild to think about. And I think bravery, like I think about it on these tough hunts, and bravery is not like never being scared or never having fear. It's like having fear or being scared and doing it anyways, and that's true bravery to me. And I think on a lot of these hunts that I'm going on, these adventure hunts, like I know, my life is in danger, that I am leaving my family, my wife and my kids, and I am putting myself in danger on purpose to go have this adventure and this wild experience. And, I'm going to have to rely upon my wits, but it's one of the things that draws me in. Like, I've got a hunt coming up for Asiatic water buffaloes with a couple of my buddies in Australia. We're going to the Northwest Territories where we got to haul this boat by saltwater crocs up and through there, and it's there's some pretty wild places and some pretty wild adventures you can take part in, but the states, they hold some of the best, like hunting elk and hunting mule deer in these wild places they live. Like, you have to rely upon your wood sense. You have to keep yourself safe. You have to make good decisions. Like, there's danger out there, but I never feel more alive than I do, like, in these places, on these hunts, or taking part in this predator prey relationship. And this predator prey, like hunting these animals, it's like the most intimate experience you can go have with nature. You're really immersing yourself. And like you said, you got comfortable up in that landscape you didn't want to live. You like became part of it. It's like you have to camp in safe places, out of the wind, and good tie downs. You have to take care of your water, of your food, take care of yourself. And like you say, you're walking through so many dangerous places. Everything's loose, everything's steep. And then the rock slides you go through, one shift of the rocks, and that could be it for you. So you really have to be on your game and on your balance. Like, it takes all this focus. And when you have all that focused, or you're immersed in this experience, you can't think of a bill you have to pay or a problem at home. Like, you are only thinking about trying to kill that mountain goat, trying to keep yourself safe in that situation, and being immersed in that habitat. It's like it just, you come back almost a different person from it. Like, when you're immersed in that and that's your sole focus, like, all the stress just comes off you. It's like, all of a sudden, that bill isn't such a big deal. You're like, oh, I'll take care of that when I get home. That's no big, at least I'm not going to fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's like that's true danger, that's true living. So I get so much perspective from it as well. And I'm just trying to do as many cool things, while I'm here on this planet, and for me, like, I've found my passion, you found your passion, and it's these big adventures and taking part in this predator prey relationship in these wild places. And that's truly what hunting means to me, for sure.
Oh, definitely. Hey everybody, this episode is brought to you by Black Buffalo. Black Buffalo's nicotine pouches do not contain tobacco leaf or stem. What they do contain is a ton of flavor, and they're packed with pharmaceutical grade nicotine. The magic of Black Buffalo is they discovered a way to make cured edible green leaves behave like the texture of tobacco. And they add food grade ingredients for industry classic flavors. You're in good company if you roam with the Black Buffalo herd. The business was built by dippers with decades of smokeless tobacco use. They manufacture their tobacco alternatives with respect for those products that came before them. Bold flavors, full pouches, metal lids, and a brand that stands for something: American. Their products are also proudly endorsed by brand ambassadors such as MMA Hall of Famer Cowboy Cerrone, NASCAR champion Brian Barney, rising country star Larry Fleet, and Rob O'Neill, former U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6. So if you're 21 and older and you consume nicotine or tobacco and you want to join the Black Buffalo herd, head over to blackbuffalo.com to learn more. You can order nicotine pouches online, and they ship directly to most states. Or you can check out their store locator to purchase pouches at thousands of retail locations around the country. Black Buffalo, an American brand, pouches worth respect. You've killed some, especially like in the mule deer sense. Like, I saw you did a post the other day of a just giant velvet buck, and then it was like you spinning, and then you had another one of you with, can you pull up his Instagram? Cause it's just such a cool video that you made. Like, I know you're just goofing around making a good video. There it is right there on the right, all the way on the right. Yeah. You can't see what I'm looking at, Brian, but it's you in the snow with a big velvet, your bow's in front of you. You know what I'm talking about? Which one I'm talking about? And then you talk about the hardhorn one. Mm-hmm. So that's the cool thing about mule deer, is that, like, it's a whole different hunt when they're rutting. It's a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not what you think. They are aggressive when they're rutting. Like, deer, whitetail are the same way, but mule deer, like, they are aggressive chasing. And what is, like, how do you hunt those rutting bucks whenever they're like crazy in the rut? Because I know I just kind of explained how you do it whenever they're, soft horn. They're pretty much going to be bedded up, and you're making sneaks and waiting for them to stand up. So what are you doing? How are you hunting them in the rut?
Yeah, it's different. It changes the dynamic of the hunt. So I hunt them like similar to like the way I hunt elk. It's like real aggressive. Like because the bucks don't bed for very long, they're always on their feet. They're always moving. And I'm hunting big mountains and deep snow, bitter cold. Like it's dangerous because you feel like you're on Everest. So you got a wind chill at 10 below and it's snowing sideways, and you got to figure out how to make a living in that country, keep yourself warm, and then make plays on these bucks. So I hunt them similar to elk. I'm using vantage points to turn them up, and then I'm making plays. I get to where they are, and then I adapt to that situation. They may move off. I follow them or shadow them, and then that opportunity presents. And so I'm just playing this game, this cat and mouse, looking for my opportunity. And then when I get to close in, I'm like throwing all my puffy gear on, all my clothes, and I'm like crawling in the snow to try to get close to these things. And I have all my clothes on so I can keep warm. And then I'm being patient, waiting for my opportunity. But they're the ultimate challenge, and you would love it, man. It's like really similar to hunting elk. They've got these huge necks. They're rutting and chasing other bucks around. They're chasing does, trying to breed them. And then they got these dark, heavy antlers. And mule deer is the biggest deer species, like you find a really big mule deer and he's just got this giant rack of horns, dark horns on him, chasing these does. So man, it's the ultimate. It's like what I spent like 5 weeks hunting all in November this year to kill a really good buck. I hunted 2 different states, multiple different places and mountain ranges, and finally got it done on like a dream buck with a great big frame. He has an extra on one of his fronts, just a dream mule deer for me that I was able to finally close out and harvest, like in that wintertime habitat, big mountains. And it was beautiful. Big hike out to like pack them out. I was by myself, but you couldn't smack that smile off my face with the 2x4. It was like I accomplished my goal, and it took everything I had to be able to arrow that buck, and I got it done. It just means the world to me, man.
What state were you in?
It was Montana?
Idaho. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Big snow.
Mm-hmm.
I hunted, as far as Montana goes, I've hunted up there. So I hunted the Crazy Mountains for elk. And that was like it's so beautiful. It's just unbelievably beautiful. And then I hunted bear in where was that? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Down not far from Frenchtown.
Okay.
Of that, those
I know where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like by Missoula there, south in those mountains. I'm not sure exactly what the range is called there. I don't think it's the
Bitterroot.
Pintlers. Oh yeah, Bitterroot. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it was in the Bitterroot.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That was so extreme. The steepness of those mountains, man. I was like, and we were on these old Indian trails too. Like, and I was just like looking for, it's crazy because we were walking up this ridge and I was like, there's got to be an arrowhead right here. Like, I guarantee there's one here. And what do you know? My buddy's like, oh, there's a bear. But he was like all the way across this ridge, and we tried to make a move on him. And that was the other thing. Bow hunting bears, that game is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not hunting bait, it is super, super tough to stalk a bear.
I think it's one of the toughest challenges in Montana. I think spot and stalking a bear, especially a big one, man. It's like there was one year I had 50 days into killing a bear, and I arrowed a great one last year. But they're the ultimate. There's less numbers than ungulates, right? And so bears are fewer and farther between the sightings of them, and they kind of get congregated at a certain elevation band that time of year as the snow's melting, neon green grass is coming up, but you have to glass them from vantage points, and you never really see them close. They're always miles away, and you're wondering if you can even get to them. And so you make these huge plays, and then their wind, they can smell 50 times what a bloodhound can. And a bloodhound can track somebody's scent coming out of car vents when it drives down the road. So bears can tell time by their scent. So if you get busted, like even just one wrong wind, one swirl of the wind, they're gone. So it's really made me better at dissecting winds in the mountains. But then you make this play, and then it's dangerous game. Like I've been charged by 2 of them I've hit with arrows. Like they are no joke. It's entry level dangerous game, but it doesn't seem entry level when you have one charging at you. So like they're dangerous games. So you have to be at your very best. You have to make precise shots, precise stalks. And then, I'm hunting them in grizzly bear country as well. But man, they're the ultimate. They are a really high degree of difficulty. And they're some of my most prized trophies when I'm able to be successful. And when I get done and I look back at a bear season, I mean, I can hunt them in the evenings after work, which evenings are prime time for bears. But yeah, there's years where I have 20, 30 days. That one year I had 50 days into arrowing a solid black bear with my bow. Man, they are the ultimate challenge. I'm glad you got to take part of that. And that Bitterroot country is some of the gnarliest country around. The rocks and chutes and steepness. Like,
So
man,
gnarly.
it takes a true man to hunt that country and go for those bears and that stuff. And I've traveled there and hunted them in that Bitterroot quite a bit. But yeah, man, what a wild experience you got to take part in chasing those bears like that. That's really cool.
Well, it's one of those things, if you're gonna be dumb, you better be tough. So I'm dumb enough to go, oh, there's a bear down there, I'm going. So and then I remember the guy that was with us. What was his name? I can't remember his name right now. You know him because we sent you a picture of us on the mountain.
Oh, Brandon Purcell. Yeah,
yes, Brandon.
An animal. Yeah, he's a really good bear hunter too. Good hunter in general.
This guy can climb a mountain. Like, I mean, I could get after it. Like I'm in great shape. I can go, and I have, this guy was going, I was like, dude, how is he gaining so much ground on me? Like I'm taking he's taking 3 steps to my 1 step. You know what I mean? Like I'm that much bigger than he is. And I'm going as fast. I'm like running up this mountain. How is he still just like, he gets to the top. He's not even breathing hard.
He's an
and I'm like, dude, how did you just do that? Yeah. I'm like gassed at the top of the mountain. He's just like, oh, well, last week I climbed all the way up to the top of that just for fun. And I'm like, what? This guy's an animal.
He lives in that country and he's been hunting it for so many years that his body is now adapted to those mountains. And I think the same thing, like it's what I'm always trying to accomplish or do is I spend so much time in these mountains, training in them, hunting in them, that it gets to be normal, And so, yeah, he lives in that Bitterroot range. That's his home range down and through there. So, man, he is just an animal in the mountains. I've hunted bears with him a bit, helped him pack out an elk. Like he's a really good human being and a great hunter, but he is in great shape, man. He's a tough one to beat to the top for sure.
Oh man. And then, well, to the top, but then on the way down, I mean, do you want to talk about getting lost? I was like, dude, I'm 280 pounds, and I got my pack on, everything. Like I'm at 300 pounds, plus. And but both of my hips had to be redone after football. So like, I can do it. I just got to like be methodical about the way I come down. And I hadn't had enough experience in like coming down mountains and understanding like the best way to do that. I could just fly down them. It's like easy now, and it's all about the boots. Like whatever, you got to have good boots, to do that. But dude, it was wet. It was raining and he was bombing down this hill. Like I was like, is he skiing down the mountain right now? Cause like he just was so fast. I was like cussing at him. I was like, hey, slow the fuck down. I was like, he was just bombing the hill, like jumping over trees and sliding. And like, you could tell he was just like in his element, it was like nothing for him. Like, it's the day's over. We're trying to get out of here. Cause we had tried to put a stalk on this bear. But like I said, dude, there was a bear that was down in this shit. And he was like, I don't know, man. He's like, I don't know if I'd go down there. And I was like, I'm going to go. He was like, all right, well, let's go then. So he was down and we went down there and, I think we just waited too long because we were kind of hoping he would pop up and come up the other side. But you know how it is on the mountain, whatever the wind is doing where you're standing, 20, 30 yards down into that valley, it's doing something completely different in that chute like that. It's like, it's doing something different. That's why they hang out there. Because they got directional wind that's kind of swirling in there and they can smell what's going on around them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened was it's like, as soon as I took a step down in there, my wind was like a little goofy and I guarantee he busted, right? He was on a sow too. And I bet the sows smelled us and she was like, I'm getting out of here, but he was the biggest mountain bear I'd ever seen. I'd never seen a mountain bear that big. And I was just when we saw him from afar, Brian, they were so big that I thought it was a sow and a cub. That's how big that boar was. And then when we got up close, like, holy shit, that is a giant, like we were at like, it's funny because he told me earlier in the day, Brandon did, he said, hey, you should bring the rifle, just because, it's gonna be tough to get in close with a bow. And I was like, let's go. I'm down for the challenge, and we had that bear standing there at like 90 yards. And I was like, man, it'd be nice to have a rifle right now. He's like, I tried to tell you. And I was like, I still think we got a chance to get him when he comes down into this stuff. He's like, I don't know if I'd go down there, man. It's going to be tough to get him out. But at least we had 3 people, so it's different when you're by yourself. You have to think about that, about where you actually shoot an animal. Cause that's kind of what I wanted to lead into next. Is like, when you're hunting elk by yourself, you got to really think about where you're packing that animal. Like, how far am I right now? How many trips is it going to take me to get out? Because nobody packs an elk out, and by themselves. If you pack an elk out in 2 trips, I'm probably going to call you a liar and tell you probably left something behind. Cause it's just no way. I mean, I debone everything too. And still it takes, I'm not carrying bones out. Like, it's just silly to carry bones out. I think if you know how to debone, which isn't difficult, I know nothing about butchering and I still know how to debone. You just follow the bone line and just cut all that meat out. But have you ever been in a situation where you could shoot a bull and you didn't because you knew there was no way you could get it all out?
I train so hard that I train for those moments. And if it's the bull I want, it's a big one that I've been chasing all year, that I will find a way. So I will pack throughout the night and I will do multiple loads. I've never lost a stitch of meat. I've never left a stitch of meat. And so, yeah, that's why I train so hard. But you are right. You have to be cognizant of that with bulls, because you think, right, you kill a bull and you're 6 miles back. And that doesn't sound like that far. It's like, okay, 6 miles back, I killed a bull. Now you've got 3 to 4 loads, probably going to have to be 4 loads if you're doing that many loads. So you got 6 miles out with that load, 6 miles back in, you're at 12, 6 miles out, 6 miles back in, you're at 24, 6 miles out, 6 miles back in, you're at 36. You're at 48 miles by the time you get that bull out of country, only 6 miles back. You better be in dang good shape if you want to shoot that bull, And so that's one of the reasons why I'm training every single day, that there is no hole, there is no bull too far. If it's the one I want, he's going to catch an arrow and I'll get him out of country. But yeah, you're in for it. I've done some bulls by myself before. And what you really got to watch for is temperatures, as long as it's getting cold at night and you can hang them up and cool them down, you're fine. But, I killed a big 7, my best bull to date this year. And, it was like 55 degrees that night, where we had to pack throughout the night to get that thing out of there. And luckily I had a cameraman, which then turns into a packer pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, it's like, you can take pictures with a pack full of meat on you too, and luckily I have really good guys that are willing to help. But, we ran our 1 load out of there and then back in at night, had to get that thing out. It was warm enough at night where you couldn't hang that thing and cool it. So it is something you have to be cognizant of. I can't ever say that I've ran into a bull that I didn't shoot because I was too far back, but my standards are pretty high on bulls. Like, I'm looking for a great big herd bull to run an arrow through, and it may take me all season long, but yeah, if I find them, I'll find a way to get them out of there. But there are limits and restrictions. I know I had a Shiras moose tag like a couple years ago, and it was like a dream. It took me 30 days to kill a Shiras moose. It was like all I had. I was into the late season trying to kill him with my bow. And I know I had put, limitations on myself that, I got to kill one 2 miles from the road. I may be by myself. I may have 6 trips with this bull. He's going to be really heavy. They weigh upwards of 1,300 pounds. He's an elk and a half, and so I did end up killing him 4 miles from the trailhead. So I went just a little bit over my maximum, but I was able to get some help, get him out of there, out of country. But they're big animals, and you definitely have to be cognizant. Like, it's our last respect to the animal. Like that, it's like that nutrient dense organic protein. I eat it every single day. And really, I think it fuels my body to be able to go after these animals so hard. And kind of a trippy thought is like, you go into these wild mountains and you're chasing this wild bull elk. Well, that bull elk survived off the grasses in the forage of that wild mountain. And when you harvest that bull and you bring him out, that mountain is now a part of you. Like, you were eating that bull that lived off that mountain, that lived in that spot. So each place I go, each animal I harvest fuels my next pursuit, but it is your last respect to that animal to bring out every stitch of meat and make sure that it's processed correctly. And then, it tastes so good too. It's like, wild game is tougher to cook. It overcooks really easy, but if you think that there's gamey taste of meat, it was some problem either with your butcher or with your cook that didn't prepare it right, because it's some of the best meat on planet Earth. And so that is my last respect to the animals, is make sure I get it out. It fuels my future pursuits. And then my girls don't know any different. They grew up on wild game. And so that's all we really have in the house, and I think
Yeah.
it's, such great protein to put in their bodies as well. And so, it is something you definitely have to consider on bull elk. They're giant animals. It looks like you have a horse down. Like every time you kill
Oh,
one, I'm always amazed at how big those animals are. And when you're by yourself, just trying to process one, I've got a whole routine now where I do one side, take the head off, able to roll it over. But some of the places they just die in a cedar bush or on a steep hillside. Like, man, that's an art as well, just being able to process that elk and get them into backpacks to be able to get them out of country. But it's a labor of love, man. I love the work that goes into it after you kill one, getting them out. And it'll take you so depleted, so tired, like probably like after playing a game or after all the practice you put in. But I love 2, 3 in the morning, and I've been packing all night, and I'm absolutely exhausted, but I got that elk on ice, and I'm ready to call it an adventure, call it good. I love that part of it as well.
yeah, that's definitely the best part, when you get back to the truck for the last time, like, and everything's gone the way it was supposed to. You didn't lose anything. Everything's good to go. You're healthy. That is the best feeling. You're just exhausted. That feeling, it is kind of like wrestling. You push yourself to exhaustion, and then you feel like that sense of accomplishment of not quitting, because the whole time you want to quit, so. But Brian, I think that's a really good spot for us to leave off on, until next time, because I'd love to have you back on and in person, and maybe we can go grab a workout or something when you're here in town. That'd be great. But I really appreciate the time, man. It's a great honor to talk to you and pick your brain, because you're just like such a wealth of knowledge. And every time that I've talked to you, it's like I always learn something. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, you're the best. Thanks so much for having me on. I love connecting with you. We're the same wavelength, so to get on
Absolutely.
and have a discussion with you, yeah, I really appreciate it. And you're doing great things for the hunting industry. Congrats on all your success. Keep after it. You have my number. Let's keep in touch. Make sure we get that workout. I got to get you back on the podcast. So yeah, like maybe Expo or something, we can connect and record another one. But you're the man. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Wolfe Untamed Podcast. Be sure to check me out on Instagram, DerekWolf_95. Check out the Wolfe Untamed Podcast on YouTube. You can listen on all the other platforms, as well as DerekWolf.com.